Are we live? Are we live? I think we're live. Just to verify, make sure. Yes, I do believe we're live. Hello, and welcome to Storytime America Edition. That's right. It is, in fact, the 4th of July weekend, so naturally America must come first. We are not the British. No, we beat those bastards and their dumb accents back to England, back in the Revolutionary War. We are not doing Russian fairy tales because this is not communist Russia. We don't have a place for those commie pinko bastards in American story time. So, for that reason, you're getting to watch American story time. Because it's a weekend and we usually watch, we usually read fairy tales, though we will read some more fairy tales. They'll just be of the American variety. Sorry, just sending a quick message. Anyway, I hope you like the classic rock-style music in the background. If it's too loud for you to hear me talking, then just say the word, and I'll crank it up more because loud music is that American. So, before we go on, I'll be pouring myself a bottle of rye whiskey. Well, I guess I don't need to pour the bottle, I'll just drink it straight from it. I've got that on hand here, and I'll be enjoying that while we read these American fairy tales. So, nice to see all of you, and Amber, you said you already commented, but I don't see any comments coming in yet. Perhaps there's just a bit of a lag. Either way, glad to have you. Huzzah! And I see I got a comment from Jerry. For you, another huzzah. For those of you watching, huzzah! And for my friend Trisha, for whom I'm doing a commercial, huzzah! For my parents who I got to see this weekend, huzzah! For Allie, you're very special to me, huzzah! For a lot of people, huzzahs all around. It is, after all, the Independence Day weekend. Oh, there's your comment, Amber. You're definitely here. That's what I'd like to hear. All right, that being said, let's go over a few of the necessities. First things first, Storytime is the group on Facebook. 2 words, exclamation point at the end. That's where you'll get most of your notifications regarding Storytime. Next up, there's my YouTube channel, Beat for Corny 1. Find that, like the video, subscribe. Hello, Rose. Huzzah! Glad you're here. Anyway, like it, subscribe to it, share it with your friends so that they can like and subscribe as well. Make sure they comment. I see Crystal has joined in. Huzzah! Lots of huzzahs to go around. Like I said, just like it, subscribe, and be American by doing both of those things. And be extra American by sharing it with your friends. Now, next up, don't forget my... what's it? Twitch? Yes, Twitch. Don't forget to join my Twitch as well. Brett Doesn't Game. All one word. Kind of glitching, you say, Rose. That is unfortunate. I don't know what I can do about that. I see Emily has joined in. Hello, Emily. Huzzah. Glad you're here. Kathleen, huzzah. Glad you're here as well. Thank you for joining in. Lots of people joining in to watch. I see Danielle has liked the video. Huzzah. Glad you're here as well. Man, so many good people jumping in for story time of the American variety. All right, who's ready? Who's ready to get down to it? We're playing the music. We're going to read some stories now. Let's go ahead and move on. Let's see, which one do I want to read? How about The Magic Bonbons? Yeah, let's read that one and see how it goes. We've got The Magic Bonbons, The Dummy That Lived, and The King of the Polar Bears. So, The Magic Bonbons it is, that's where we're starting. There lived in Boston a wise and ancient chemist by the name of Dr. Dawes who dabbled somewhat in magic. There also lived in Boston a young lady by the name of Clarabelle Sudds who was possessed of much money, little wit, and an intense desire to go upon the stage. So Clarabelle went to Dr. Dawes and said, "I can neither sing nor dance, I cannot recite verse nor play upon the piano. I am no acrobat, no leaper nor high kicker, yet I wish to go upon the stage. What shall I do?" "Are you willing to pay for such accomplishments?" asked the wise chemist. "Certainly," answered Clarabelle, jingling her purse. "Then come to me tomorrow at 2 o'clock," said he. All that night he practiced what is known as chemical sorcery, so that when Clarabelle Sudds came next day at 2 o'clock, he showed her a small box filled with compounds that closely resembled French bonbons. "This is a progressive stage," said the old man, "and I flatter myself your Uncle Dawes keeps right along with the procession. Now, one of your old-fashioned sorcerers would have made you some nasty bitter pills to swallow, but I have consulted your taste and convenience. Here are some magic bonbons. If you eat this one with the lavender color, then you dance thereafter as lightly and gracefully as if you had been trained a lifetime. After you consume the pink confection, you will sing like a nightingale. Eating the white one will enable you to become the finest elocutionist in the land. The chocolate piece will charm you into playing the piano better than Rubinstein, while after eating your lemon yellow bonbon, you can easily kick 6 feet above your head." "How delightful!" exclaimed Clarabelle, who was truly enraptured. "You are certainly a most clever sorcerer as well as a considerate compounder." And she held out her hand for the box. "Ahem," said the wise one. "A check, please." "Oh, yes, to be sure. How stupid of me to forget it," she returned. He considerately "That's not rock and roll." Maybe it'll get there. Let's just see where it goes. All right. That's fine. That'll be fine. I don't know. I feel like I should jump into another song or jump forward. There's some guitar. I'll accept that. He considerately retained the box in his own hand while she signed a check for a large amount of money. After she allowed her to hold the box herself. "Are you sure you have made them strong enough?" she inquired anxiously. "It usually takes a great deal to affect me." "My only fear," replied Mr. Dawes, "is that I have made them too strong, for this is the first time I have ever been called upon to prepare these wonderful confections." "Don't worry," said Clarabelle. "The stronger they act, the better I shall act myself." She went away after saying this, but stopping in a dry goods store to shop, she forgot the precious box in her new interest and left it lying on the ribbon counter. Then little Bessie Boswick came to the counter to buy a hair ribbon and laid her parcels beside the box. When she went away, she gathered up the box with her other bundles and trotted off home with it. Bessie never knew until after she had hung her coat in the hall closet and counted up her parcels that she had one too many. Then she opened it and exclaimed, "Why, it's a box of candy. Someone must have mislaid it. But it is too small a matter to worry about. There are only a few pieces." So she dumped the contents of the box into a bonbon dish that stood upon the hall table, and picking out the chocolate piece, she was fond of chocolates, ate it daintily while she examined her purchases. These were not many, for Bessie was only 12 years old and was not yet trusted by her parents to expend much money at the stores. But while she tried on the hair ribbon, she suddenly felt a great desire to play upon the piano. And the desire at last became so overpowering that she went into the parlor and opened the instrument. The little girl had, with infinite pains, contrived to learn 2 pieces, which she usually executed with a jerky movement of her right hand and the left hand, and forgot to keep up and made so many dreadful discords. But under the influence of the chocolate bonbon, she sat down and ran her finger lightly over the keys, producing such exquisite harmony that she was filled with amazement at her own performance. This was the prelude, however. The next moment, she dashed into Beethoven's 7th Sonata and played it magnificently. Her mother, hearing the unusual burst of melody, came downstairs to see what musical guest had arrived. But when she discovered it was her own little girl who was playing so finely, she had an attack of palpitation of the heart, to which she was subject, and sat down upon a sofa until it should pass away. Meanwhile, Bessie played one piece after another with untiring energy. She loved music, and now found that all she need do was to sit at the piano and listen and watch her hands twinkle over the keyboard. Twilight deepened in the room, and Bessie's father came home and hung up his hat and overcoat and placed his umbrella on the rack. Then he peeped into the parlor to see who was playing. "Great Caesar!" he exclaimed. But the mother came to him softly with her finger on her lips, and whispered, "Don't interrupt her, John. Our child seems to be in a trance. Did you ever hear such superb music?" "Why, she's an infant prodigy," gasped the astounded father. Beats blown Tom all hollow. It's wonderful. I'm going to have to remember that phrase. Beats blind Tom all hollow. I like it. As they stood listening, the senator arrived, having been invited to dine with them that evening. And before he had taken off his coat, the Yale professor, a man of deep learning and scholarly attainments, joined the party. Bessie played on, and the four elders stood in a huddled but silent and amazed group, listening to the music and waiting for the sound of the dinner gong. Mr. Bostwick, who was hungry, picked up the bonbon dish that lay on the table beside him and ate the pink confection. The professor was watching him, so Mr. Bostwick courteously held the dish toward him. The professor ate the lemon-yellow piece, and the senator reached out his hand and took the lavender piece. He did not eat it, however, for chancing to remember that it might spoil his dinner, he put it in his vest pocket. Mrs. Bostwick, still intently listening to her precocious daughter, without thinking what she did, took the remaining piece, which was the white one, and slowly devoured it. The dish was now empty, and Clarabelle Sudd's precious bonbons had passed from her possession forever. Suddenly, where'd the music go? This is bullshit. I'm going to fix this problem. Alright, it appears a new song is beginning. That was a rather abrupt ending to that one song, though. Oh, the music's a bit loud, then let me turn it down just a tad. That should help. There we go, and that'll help a little bit more. Alright, there we go. So, shall we get back to the story? I think we shall. Moving onward. Here we go. Suddenly, Mr. Bostwick, who was a big man, began to sing in a shrill, tremolo soprano voice. It was not the same song Bessie was playing, and the discord was shocking. That the professor smiled. The senator put his hands to his ears, and Mrs. Bostwick cried in a horrified voice, "William!" Her husband continued to sing as if endeavoring to emulate the famous Christine Nilsson, and paid no attention whatever to his wife or his guests. Fortunately, the dinner gong now sounded, and Mr. Bostwick dragged Bessie from the piano and ushered her guests into the dining room. Mr. Bostwick followed, singing "The Last Rose of Summer," as if it had been an encore demanded by 1,000 delighted hearers. The poor woman was in despair at witnessing her husband's undignified actions and wondered what she might do to control him. The professor seemed more grave than usual. The senator's voice wore an offended expression, and Bessie kept moving her fingers as if she still wanted to play the piano. Mrs. Bostwick managed to get them all seated, although her husband had broken into another aria. And then the maid brought in the soup. Oh boy, the soup. I wonder what will happen with the soup. Alright, glad to hear that's a good difference on the music. When she carried a plate to the professor, he cried in an excited voice, "Hold it higher, higher, I say." And springing up, he gave it a sudden kick that sent it nearly to the ceiling, from whence the dish descended to scatter soup over Bessie and the maid and to smash in pieces upon the crown of the professor's bald head. At this atrocious act, the senator rose from the seat with an exclamation of horror and glanced at his hostess. For some time, Mrs. Bostwick had been staring straight ahead with a dazed expression, but now, catching the senator's eye, she bowed gracefully and began reciting, "Charge with the Light Brigade" in forceful tones. The senator shuddered. Such disgraceful rioting he had never seen nor heard before in a decent private family. He felt his reputation was at stake, and being the only sane person apparently in the room, there was no one to whom he might appeal. The maid had run away to cry hysterically in the kitchen. Mr. Bostwick was singing "Oh, Promise Me." The professor was trying to kick the globes off the chandelier. Mrs. Bostwick had switched her recitation to "The Boy Stood on the Burning Deck," and Bessie had stolen into the parlor and was pounding out the overture from "The Flying Dutchman." The senator was not all sure he could not go crazy himself presently, so he slipped away from the turmoil and, catching up his hat and coat in the hall, hurried from the house. That night, he sat up late, writing a political speech he was to deliver the next afternoon at Faneuil Hall. I can't remember how it's pronounced, but that's American, right? Forgetting how to pronounce thing, I don't care. Faneuil Hall. Faneuil Hall? I don't care, I'm American. But his experiences at the Bostwicks had so unnerved him that he could scarcely collect his thoughts, and often he would pause and shake his head pityingly as he remembered the strange things he had seen in that usually respectable home. The next day he met Mr. Bostwick in the street, but passed him by with a stony glare of oblivion. He felt he really could not afford to know this gentleman in the future. Mr. Bostwick was naturally indignant at the direct snub, yet in his mind lingered a faint memory of some quite unusual occurrences at his dinner party the evening before, and he hardly knew whether he dared resent the senator's treatment or not. The political meeting was the feature of the day, for the senator's eloquence was well known in Boston. So the big hall was crowded with people, and in one of the front rows sat the Bostwick family with the learned Yale professor beside them. They all looked tired and pale, as if they had passed a rather dissipating evening, and the senator was rendered so nervous by seeing them that he refused to look in the direction a second time. While the mayor was introducing him, the great man sat fidgeting in his chair and happened to put his thumb and finger into his vest pocket. He found the lavender-colored bonbon he had placed there the evening before. "This may clear my throat," thought the senator, and slipped the bonbon into his mouth. A few minutes afterward, he arose before the vast audience, which greeted him with enthusiastic plaudits. "My friends," began the senator in a grave voice, "this is a most impressive and important occasion." Then he paused, balanced himself upon his left foot, and kicked his right leg into the air in the way favored by ballet dancers. There was a hum of amazement and horror from the spectators, but the senator appeared not to notice. And fucking shit, this is not rock and roll music. I'm going to go back to the beginning, because at least those first couple songs were respectably rockish. There we go. Back to it. That's more like it. Now back to the story. Sorry for that distraction of the terrible music. There was a hum of amazement and horror from the spectators, but the senator appeared not to notice it. He whirled around upon the tips of his toes, kicked right and left in a graceful manner, and startled the bald-headed man in the front row by casting a languishing glance in his direction. Suddenly, Clarabelle Sudds, who happened to be present, uttered a scream and sprang to her feet. Pointing an accusing finger at the dancing senator, she cried in a loud voice, "That's the man who stole my bonbons! Seize him! Arrest him! Don't let him escape!" But the ushers rushed her out of the hall, thinking she had gone suddenly insane, and the senator's friends seized him firmly, carried him out of the stage entrance to the street, where they put him into an open carriage and instructed the driver to take him home. The effect of the magic bonbon was still powerful enough to control the poor senator, who stood upon the rear seat of the carriage and danced energetically all the way home, to the delight of the crowd of small boys who followed the carriage and the grief of the sober-minded citizens, who shook their heads sadly and whispered that another good man had gone wrong. It took the senator several months to recover from the shame and humiliation of this escapade, and curiously enough, he never had the slightest idea what had induced him to act in so extraordinary a manner. Perhaps it was fortunate that the last bonbon had now been eaten, but it might easily have caused considerably more trouble than they did. Of course, Clarabelle went again to the wise chemist and signed a check for another box of magic bonbons, but she must have taken better care of these, for she is now a famous vaudeville actress. This story should teach us the folly of condemning others for actions that we do not understand, for we never know what may happen to ourselves. It may also serve as a hint to be careful about leaving parcels in public places and, incidentally, to let other people's packages severely alone. That, my friends, was the magic bonbons, which means it's time to move on to one more story for the evening. Don't forget, story time on Facebook. You can find me too, Brett Picorni. Then there's Beat Picorni1, my YouTube channel. Like it, subscribe to it, share it with your friends. And finally, Twitch, Brett Doesn't Game, all one word. Let's go ahead and finish up with The Dummy That Lived. My, that seems, let's see, which one's long? Oh, yeah, it's got some, okay, it's not too terribly long. It's not short, but not too terribly long. It's probably shorter than The King of Polar Bears. Actually, you know what? We'll go with The Dummy That Lived. That sounds more fun. All right, here we go. I'm going to start back with that other music track again. We're going to go back so we can keep the rock rolling. In all fairyland, there is no more mischievous a person than Tanko Mankie, the yellow rill. He flew through the city one afternoon, quite invisible to mortal eyes, but seeing everything himself, and noticed the figure of a wax lady standing behind the big plate glass window of Mr. Floorman's department store. The wax lady was beautifully dressed, and extended in her stiff left hand was a card bearing the words, "Rare Bargain, the stylish costume, imported from Paris, former price $20, reduced to only $19.98. 2-cent drop in price, that's pretty significant." This impressive announcement had drawn before the window a crowd of women shoppers, who stood looking at the wax lady with critical eyes. Tanko Mankie laughed to himself, with a low, gurgling little laugh that always means mischief. Then he flew close to the wax figure and breathed twice upon its forehead. From that instant, the dummy began to live, but so dazed and astonished was she at the unexpected sensation that she continued to stand stupidly staring at the woman outside and holding out the placard as before. The rill laughed again and flew away. Anyone but Tanko Mankie would have remained to help the wax lady out of the troubles that were sure to overtake her, but this naughty elf thought it rare fun to turn the inexperienced lady loose in a cold and heartless world and leave her to shift to herself. Fortunately, it was almost 6 o'clock when the dummy first realized that she was alive. Before she had collected her new thoughts, she decided what to do, a man came around and drew down all the window shades, shutting off the view from the curious shoppers. Then the clerk and cashiers and floor walkers and cash girls went home and the store was closed for the night, although the sweepers and scrubbers remained to clean the floors for the following day. The window, inhabited by the wax lady, was boxed in like a little room, one small door being left at the side for the window trimmer to creep in and out of. So the scrubbers never noticed that the dummy, when left to herself, dropped the placard to the floor and sat down upon a pile of silks to wonder who she was, where she was, and how she happened to be alive. Isn't that an interesting thought? A dummy coming to life. Pretty sure there are a few movies about that. In fact, I know there are a few movies about that. For you must consider, dear reader, that in spite of her size and her rich costume, in spite of her pink cheeks and fluffy yellow hair, this lady was very young, no older in reality than a baby born but half an hour. All she knew of the world was contained in the glimpse she had secured of the busy street facing her window. All she knew of people lay in the actions of the group of women which had stood before her on the other side of the window pane and criticized the fit of her dress or remarked upon its stylish appearance. So she had little enough to think about, and her thoughts moved somewhat slowly. Yet one thing she really decided upon, and that was not to remain at the window and be insolently stared at by a lot of women who were not nearly so handsome or well-dressed as herself. By the time she reached this important conclusion, it was after midnight, but dim lights were burning in the big deserted store. So she crept through the door of her window and walked down the long aisles, pausing now and then to look with much curiosity at the wealth of finery confronting her on every side. When she came to the glass cases filled with trimmed hats, she remembered having seen upon the heads of the women in the street similar creations. So she selected one that suited her fancy and placed it carefully upon her yellow locks. I won't attempt to explain what instinct it was that made her glance into a nearby mirror to see if the hat was straight, but this she certainly did. It didn't correspond with her dress very well, but the poor thing was too young to have much taste in matching colors. When she reached the glove counter, she remembered that gloves were also worn by the women she had seen. She took a pair from the case and tried to fit them upon her stiff, wax-coated fingers, but the gloves were too small and ripped in the seams. Then she tried another pair and several others as well, but hours passed before she finally succeeded in getting her hands covered with a pair of pea-green kids. Next, she selected the parasol from a large and varied assortment in the rear of the store. Not that she had any idea what it was used for, but the other ladies carried such things, so she also would have one. When she again examined herself critically in the mirror, she decided her outfit was not complete. To her inexperienced eyes, there was no perceptible difference between her and the women who had stood outside the window. Whereupon she tried to leave the store, but found every door fast locked. The wax lady was in no hurry. She inherited patience from a previous existence. Just to be alive and to wear beautiful clothes was sufficient enjoyment for her at the present. So she sat down upon a stool and waited quietly until daylight. When the janitor unlocked the door in the morning, the wax lady swept past him walked with stiff but stately strides down the street. The poor fellow was so completely whuckered at seeing the well-known wax lady leave the window and march away from the store that he fell over in a heap, and only saved himself from fainting by striking his funny bone against the doorstep. When he recovered his wits, she had turned the corner and disappeared. Can you still hear okay? I was adjusting the master volume. The wax lady's immature mind had reasoned that since she had come to life, her evident duty was to mix with the world and do whatever other folks did. She could not realize how different she was from people of flesh and blood, nor did she know she was the first dummy that had ever lived, or that she owed her unique existence to Tanko Mankey's love of mischief. So ignorance gave her a confidence in herself that she was not justly entitled to. And fuck this song. Let's go back to the beginning. You know what? No, we'll skip forward to this one called Target Practice. That sounds American. Alright, I can accept that. And hello, Mom, I see you've joined. Huzzah! Good to see you. Yes, I can accept this song for sure. Back to the story. It was yet early in the day, and few people she met were hurrying along the streets. Many of them turned into restaurants and eating houses, and following their example, the wax lady also entered one and sat upon a stool before a lunch counter. "Coffee and rolls," said a shop girl on the next stool. "Coffee and rolls," repeated the dummy, and soon the waiter placed them before her. Of course, she had no appetite, as her constitution, being mostly wood, did not require food, but she watched the shop girl and saw her put the coffee to her mouth and drink it. Therefore, the wax lady did the same, and the next instant was surprised to feel the hot liquid trickling out between her wooden ribs. The coffee also blistered her wax lips, and so disagreeable was the experience that she arose and left the restaurant, paying no attention to the demands of the waiter for 20 cents, ma'am. Not that she intended to defraud him, but the poor creature had no idea what he meant by 20 cents, ma'am. As she came out, she met the window trimmer at Floorman's store. The man was rather nearsighted, but seeing something familiar in the lady's features, he politely raised his hat. The wax lady also raised her hat, thinking it the proper thing to do, and the man hurried away with a horrified face. Then a woman touched her arm and said, "Beg pardon, ma'am, but there's a price mark hanging on your dress behind." "Yes, I know," replied the wax lady stiffly. "It was originally $20, but it's been reduced to $19.98. The woman looked surprised at such indifference and walked on. Some carriages were standing at the edge of the sidewalk, and seeing the dummy hesitate, a driver approached her and touched his cap. "Cab, ma'am?" he asked. "No," she said, misunderstanding him. "I'm Wax." "Oh," he exclaimed, and looked after her wonderingly. "Here's your morning paper," yelled the newsboy. "Mine, did you say?" she asked. "Sure, Chronicle, Choir, Republic, and Dispatch. What'll you have?" "What are they for?" inquired the wax lady simply. Why, to read, of course, all the news, you know." She shook her head and glanced at a paper. "It looks all speckled and mixed up," she said. "I'm afraid I can't read." "Ever been to school?" asked the boy, becoming interested. "No, what school?" she inquired. The boy gave her an indignant look. "Say," he cried, "you're just a dummy. That's what you are," and ran away to seek a more promising customer. I wonder what he means," thought the poor lady. "Am I really different in some way than all the others? I look like them, certainly, and I try to act like them, yet that boy called me a dummy and seemed to think I acted queerly." This idea worried her a little, but she walked on to the corner, where she noticed a streetcar stop to let some people on. The wax lady, still determined to do as others did, also boarded the car and sat down quietly in a corner. After riding a few blocks, the conductor approached her and said, "Fare, please." "What's that?" she inquired instantly. "Your fare," said the man impatiently. She stared at him stupidly, trying to think what he meant. Come on," growled the conductor. "Either pay up or get off." Still, she did not understand, and he grabbed her rudely by the arm and lifted her to her feet. But when his hand came in contact with the hard wood of her arm, he was filled with surprise. He stooped down. "What is this bullshit music? I'm going back again. Oh my gosh, this needs to change fast." All right, back to the real music. and back to the story. Still, she did not understand, and he grabbed her rudely to, yes. But when his hand came in contact with the hard wood of which her arm was made, the fellow was filled with surprise. He stooped down and peered into her face, and seeing it was just wax instead of flesh, he gave a yell of fear and jumped from the car, running as if he had been a ghost, had seen a ghost. At this, the other passengers also yelled and sprang from the car, fearing a collision, and the motorman, knowing something was wrong, followed suit. The wax lady, seeing the others run, jumped from the car last of all and stepped in front of another car coming at full speed from the opposite direction. She heard cries of fear and of warning on all sides, but before she understood that her danger, she was knocked down and dragged for half a block. When the car was brought to a stop, a policeman reached down and pulled her from under the wheels. Her dress was badly torn and soiled. Her left ear was entirely gone. The left side of her head was caved in, but she quickly scrambled to her feet and asked for her hat. This gentleman had already picked up, and when the policeman handed it to her and noticed the great hole in her head and the hollow place it disclosed, the poor fellow trembled so frightfully that his knees actually knocked together. Why, ma'am, you're killed, he gasped. What does it mean to be killed? Asked the wax lady. The policeman shuddered and wiped the perspiration from his forehead. You're it, he answered with a groan. The crowd that had collected was looking upon the lady wonderingly, and the middle-aged gentleman now exclaimed, Why, she's wax. Wax, echoed the policeman. Certainly, she's one of those dummies that they put in the windows, declared the middle-aged man. The people who had collected shouted, You're right, that's what she is, she's a dummy. Are you? Inquired the policeman sternly. The wax lady did not reply. She began to fear she was getting into trouble, and the staring crowd might seem to embarrass her. Suddenly, a bootblack attempted to solve the problem by saying, You guys is all wrong. Can a dummy talk? Can a dummy walk? Can a dummy live? Hush, murmured the policeman. Look here. And he pointed to the hole in the lady's head. The newsboy looked, turned pale, and whistled to keep himself from shivering. A second policeman now arrived, and after a brief conference, it was decided to take the strange creature to headquarters. So they called a hurry-up wagon, and the damaged wax lady was helped inside and driven to the police station. There, the policeman locked her in a cell and hastened to tell Inspector Mugg their wonderful story. Inspector Mugg had just eaten a poor breakfast and was not in a pleasant mood. So he roared and stormed at the unlucky policemen, saying that they were themselves dummies to bring such a fairy tale to a man of sense. He also hinted that they had been guilty of intemperance. Oh, I might need to push that music again, see what it changes to. The policeman tried to explain, but Inspector Mugg would not listen, and while they were still disputing, in rushed Mr. Floorman, the owner of the department store. I want a dozen detectives at once, Inspector, he cried. What for? Demanded Mugg. One of my wax ladies has escaped from my store and eloped with a $19.98 costume, a $4.23 hat, a $2.19 parasol, and a 76-cent pair of gloves, and I want her arrested. Those are all very cheap. I wonder when this was written. While he paused for breath, the inspector glared at him in amazement. Is everyone going crazy at the same time? He inquired sarcastically. How could a wax dummy run away? I don't know, but she did. When my janitor opened the door this morning, he saw her run out. Why didn't he stop her? Asked Mugg. He was too frightened, but she stole my property, Your Honor, and I want her arrested, declared the storekeeper. The inspector thought for a moment. You wouldn't be able to prosecute her, he said, for there's no law against dummies stealing. Mr. Floorman sighed bitterly. You might lose that $19.98 costume and that $4.25 hat, and by no means, interrupted Inspector Mugg. The police of the city are ever prompt to act in defense of our worthy citizens. We have already arrested the wax lady, and she's locked up in cell number 16. You may go there and recover your property if you wish, but before you prosecute her for stealing, you'd better hunt up a law that applies to dummies. All I want, said Mr. Foreman, is that $19.98 costume, and come along, interrupted the policeman. I'll take you to the cell. But when they entered number 16, they found only a lifeless dummy lying prone upon the floor. Its wax was cracked and blistered, its head was badly damaged, and the bargain costume was dusty, soiled, and much bedraggled. For the mischief-loving Tanko Manky had flown by and breathed once more upon the poor wax lady, and in that instant her brief life ended. It's just as I thought, said Inspector Mugg, leaning back in his chair contentedly. I knew all the time the thing was a fake. It seems sometimes as though the whole world would go crazy if there was some level-headed man around to bring them to their senses. Dummies are wood and wax, and that's all there is of them. That may be the rule, whispered the policeman to himself, but this one, where a dummy has lived. And that was a story. I don't know if there was any point to that story, but that was a story. With that, it's time to wrap up with story time. We started early tonight. We're wrapping up just before our regular start time of 10 p.m. And I certainly hope you all had a good time listening to these stories with me during this. Hang on a second. Right, there we go. During this, the most American of weekends. Anyway, without further ado, I bid you adieu. Don't forget, find Storytime, the group on Facebook. 2 words, exclamation point at the end. And skipping this damn song, go back to Riot. There we go, Riot's a good one. And also, YouTube, Beat the Corny One. Make sure you like this video and all my other videos if you want. Subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends. And then, let's see, Brett Doesn't Game. That's a Twitch channel. Find that one as well. Anyway, comment as much as you please. I'll respond as much as I can. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. Tomorrow we'll be resuming with Bram Stoker's Dracula. Until then, have a great night. And I will see you tomorrow. Okay? Sound good? Good. Better. Time to end this video now. Yeah, I'm going to do that.